To create general office purchase orders and to input AP invoices, go to the Tools menu and select the option General PO and AP Invoice. The process for creating a general PO and an AP invoice are virtually the same. First, you'll want to enter in the entity reference number. This is the invoice number that the vendor has sent to you. If you're doing a general PO and you don't know the entity reference number, you do not have to enter it at this time. Next, select how you want to search for your supplier. We're going to search by company name, and we're going to type in 2000 and hit enter. Since Systems 2000 is going to be our supplier, we just need to hit the enter key, and that information will be displayed in the info box. If the supplier was not on file, or we'd like to edit the information of the supplier that we searched for, we just need to click the Add Modify Entity. If we hadn't selected a supplier, the information over here would be blank, and when we click the Add Modify Entity, it would take us directly to an add screen. Since we have searched and recalled a supplier, we'll click the Entity button, and it will recall and display the information for that supplier. At this time, we can review and edit and save any information as needed. Next, we'll type in a description of what we are purchasing and enter the quantity if needed, and then what this item is going to cost us. If this is an item that you're going to purchase for your own internal use, it is taxable. You may not have paid the tax on it at the time of purchase, but it still needs to be recorded that that sales tax is payable and due. In this case, we'll say that these office supplies are going to be used for internal, so we'll check the taxable checkbox. The system automatically defaults the GL account number that's going to be debited as the expense to the account number that was set on the entity's information. It is not required, but you can select the payment type as how you paid for this invoice. If this invoice or general PO is for a specific stock unit, enter the stock number at this time. Like the GL accounts, there is a stock number search button that you can click to find the correct stock number if you don't know it. Once a stock number is entered into this field, you can also hit the View button to bring up that stock number and make any edits or changes as needed. You can also enter in some invoice comments in the comments field. These comments will also post over into the accounting system and will be listed on the Accounting Transactions Comments field. Enter as many line items as needed to complete the invoice or general purchase order. At the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you can see the tax rate and tax total. At this point, we do not have a tax rate, but we will put in 6%, and you can see that the tax total has now been calculated. If you're a Canadian dealer and you've been set up for GST tracking, the system will also calculate the GST total, giving you a final total of this invoice. The taxes applied to this invoice or purchase order will be posted over into the accounting system under your sales tax or GST tax payable account. At the bottom left of the screen is a History button. This History button will display all changes made to this invoice. If someone comes in at a later date and makes a change to it, and you need to know who made the change and what was actually changed, you can click on the History button and see every change that was made, by whom, and the date and time, and what actually was changed. You have four main buttons down on the bottom right-hand corner of the General PO or AP invoice. If you've decided that this invoice or purchase order was entered in error, you can click the Void button. If you have not completed this invoice or purchase order and would like to come back to it later, just click the Order Later button. The Order Later button works as the same manner as a Save button for later recall. If the general PO is correct, you can click the Order Now button. And when the products have been received, you can come back later and click the Receive button. Since the system does not know whether you are entering an AP invoice or a general PO, the fourth button is known as Order and Receive. If this button is clicked, the system will automatically presume that this is an AP invoice. It will order it, apply the purchase order, apply it as received, and create the accounts payable transaction in accounting so that you can pay the invoice. If you click the Order Now, the caption on the Order and Receive button will just be Receive because it's already been ordered. To recap, if you're entering in a general PO, once the entry is complete, you would just click the Order Now. When you receive the goods, you would recall this purchase order, and this button to the right would just say Receive, and you would click the Receive button. Since this is an AP invoice, we will just click the Order and Receive, which sets up the payable. The system asks if we'd like to place this order, and we'll say yes. The status of the invoice has gone to completely fulfilled, and the system is ready to post a transaction into the accounting for an accounts payable so that you can cut the check and pay the supplier. If we needed to add another AP invoice at this time, we would just click the Add button at the bottom left. If we wanted to search through previous purchase orders and invoices, we click the Search button, and a search screen would come up that we could fill in, which would then retrieve a listing of results that we could pick out which invoice or purchase order that we would like to view or modify. If you wanted to scan a copy of the invoice or a packing slip or any other document associated with this purchase order or invoice, just click the Scan Images button. Later on, when you recall the invoice or general PO and you wanted to view any documents that were attached to it, click the View Images. If you want to send an email with this purchase order invoice attached to it, click the Email button. The actual PO has been saved as a PDF and attached to this invoice. You can then assign the email address that you wish to send it to. To print a copy of this general PO or AP invoice, click the Print button. And if everything is correct and you're finished viewing this, you can click the Close or Exit button to leave this screen. If you have set up templates for recurring accounting entries under the Edit, Modify, and Add Modify Recurring Entries, those entries will not be created until the user clicks on the Tools and clicks the feature Create Recurring Entries. The Create Recurring Entries tool reads all entries that were set up in the Add Modify Recurring Entries, processes and posts those entries into the current month. You can create elaborate external financial statements in Microsoft Excel. Once those financial statements are created, you will want to export the data from your accounting system to those spreadsheets. But first, you'll have to tell the system where you want that data to appear on the spreadsheet. You do this through the Add Modify GL Accounts. We'll go to Edit, Modify, and then the Add Modify GL Accounts utility. With each GL account, there is a bucket called External Statement. If you type in a 1, the information and balances for this GL account will appear on line 1 of your Excel spreadsheet. Proceed through all GL accounts telling which line you want them to appear on. When you're done, you can return to the Tools bar and go into the External Financial Statements utility. First, select what processing month and processing year you want to export, along with the company number and profit center. You can send the data to the Excel spreadsheet in 3 different formats: a sequential format, a fixed format, and a sequential grouped format. If you want this spreadsheet to be broken down by profit center departments, click the Show Profit Center and Department checkbox. In the Spreadsheet field, type in the location of the spreadsheet that you want to export to. If you want to launch the spreadsheet or open it up after you do the export, check the Launch Excel Spreadsheet checkbox, and then click the Export to Excel. As you can see, all of our data is neatly formatted on this page 1. Just about everything that you'll need to know to create an elaborate financial statement is here on this page. As you create your custom reports and elaborate spreadsheets, you do this on a second page, and you refer back to page 1 or your data page. You can rename the page if you know enough about Excel, but in our example, we took the formula for Excel and said take the information on sheet 1 in bucket E2 plus the information on sheet 1 in bucket E3. When we hit enter, we get the total. This total comes from this field plus this field. Now keep in mind, each time that we export the data from our accounting system, these fields will be populated with the most current data. And thus, the formulas that are on the subsequent pages will reference the new data. If you want to export data from the accounting system into an Excel spreadsheet or other data files, click on Tools and then Spreadsheet Views. In the left-hand tree of the spreadsheet views are a number of data sheets. These data sheets are raw data in a data grid. They can also be used to research the data within the system. For example, this is an AR customer data sheet. Using the filter bar, I can drill down for information that I would like. If I want to export this data to an Excel spreadsheet, I can click the Export button. If I want this to automatically launch and open up that Excel spreadsheet once it has been exported, click the Launch checkbox. We'll click Export. We'll type in our name. We'll call it Customer Information, and we'll click Save. And we now have a spreadsheet with all of the information nicely formatted that we can either create our own custom report or create mailing lists for external companies and things of that nature. We'll close the spreadsheet, and you'll notice that you have all different types of data sheets here with the data that you need to create your own reports. Audit reports are a useful tool for finding potential problems or alerting you to any inconsistencies that have been posted into the system. Go to Tools and click the Audit Reports. The system will automatically generate reports. In this example, we have a vehicle inventory audit report that is showing numerous stock numbers that have not been assigned GL accounts. If an internal is done on one of these units and it gets transferred to accounting, it will not have a GL account number assigned to that transaction, and thus the accounting department will get a transfer alert and will have to go in and modify the transaction in the Not Posted section. By printing these reports and correcting all issues before internals or sales are done on these vehicles, it will ensure that the data that is transferred to accounting comes over error-free. The accounts receivable transaction write-off process is located under Tools and AR Write-Offs. This utility will create an entry that zeroes out any AR invoices that are below a minimum balance. It is useful when you decide that certain invoices are more costly to try to collect than just to write off. The system is going to create a transaction and needs the date that you want that transaction to be created on. That is called the write-off transaction date. Next, you select an accounts receivable account. It can either be an AR account or a warranty receivables account. Next, select the write-off expense account that you want this transaction to be debited. It's usually a miscellaneous or bad debt. If you leave the entity number blank, the system will go through all entities within that general ledger account number that has been specified. If you want to write them off just for a specific entity, enter the entity number at this time. Next, enter the minimum amount that you want to write off. For example, we have $15 here. Any invoice less than $15 will be written off if it was invoiced before the date that we are going to select in the write-off transaction dated before field. Once that's done, click the Process button and the system will automatically create the entry for you. If you want to create write-down transactions for your vehicles on an automated process, go to Tools and click the Vehicle Write-Downs utility. This process will loop through all of your vehicles looking for those that fit the criteria that you have specified, and then create a transaction based on the percentage that you have specified to decrease the inventory balance. For example, we have the option to put in the unit age. Here we have 90 days entered. We can select whether it is new or used, the year, make, or model, and what location the unit is currently at if we have a multi-location dealership. If we only want to write these units down one time, check it as the first write down only. The system will then go through and find all vehicles that match this parameter. If the checkbox for first time write downs only is checked and the system finds that this vehicle has already been written down, it will not create a transaction for it. If the vehicle meets the criteria and has not been written down, it will then create a transaction based on the following specifications. First, which unit inventory account would you like to write down? Select the account number and then tell the system to either write down from total cost or from just the purchase price. Give it the date that you want the general ledger transaction to be created on, and then give the expense account that you want these transactions to be debited to. And then enter the percentage of the write-down amount. Once you've filled in the parameters you like, click the Process button, and again, the system will loop through all vehicles on file, finding those that match the criteria that you have entered in, and then creating a transaction based on the parameters that you have entered in at the bottom. Dealerships that purchase units internationally and would like to apply an exchange rate factor to each unit that is purchased or from outside their local country can use the tool called Unit Inventory Exchange Rate. When entering a vehicle into your inventory, there will be a field located on the unit inventory screen called Country of Origin. The user would need to enter the country that that unit was purchased from. Once that is done, you can then use the Unit Exchange Rate utility. You type in the country of origin, if you purchased it from USA, the current exchange rate that you would want to use, 5%, and then the GL account number that is going to be the offset for the exchange rate. For example, if you've purchased a unit for $10,000 and you have a 5% exchange rate, then the system will create a transaction to that unit, increasing the purchase price by 5%. The credit amount is going to go to the account that you have specified in the GL account field here. The system will loop through all vehicles applying the exchange rate. If you come back at a later date and you change the exchange rate from 5 to 10%, the computer will find all units that do not have an exchange rate transaction and raise their value by 10%. Any units in the past that had already been raised by 5 will get a 5% increase, so that all units would then have a final exchange rate increase to what the current exchange rate is that was entered in at that time that the process button was clicked.